Welcome to the 16th season of the NitWits, a weekly roundtable discussion on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Our panel includes Neil Riddell of the Altoona Mirror, Mark Brennan of FightOnState.com, Jacob Cowker of WTAJ Sports, and a special guest nitwit each week. The Nitwits are brought to you by Irwin Financial Raymond James, an independent firm and firm foundation for your financial future. Coldwell Banker, no one will work harder to sell your home. By Doctors Howells, Reed, and Solani, orthodontics for children and adults. By Fiore True Value on 6th Avenue, Altoona. Just ask rental. Buy what you want, rent what you need. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your cleaning needs. By Your Rehab Choice, Health South Altoona. Ask for us by name. By Courtesy Motors of Altoona, where courtesy means a great deal. By the Allegro, where fine cuisine is a way of life. By the Altoona Professional Hearing Aid Center, your hearing aid healthcare professional. By EasyToUse.com, your Yellow Pages connection in print and online. By FightOnState.com, as close as you get to Penn State football without putting on a helmet. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State game day every Friday.
Hi there. We figured Penn State would lose at some point this year. It's hard to go unbeaten. Few people thought it would be Northwestern. Welcome back to the Nitwits again with us this week. The regulars, Neil Riddell from the Altoona Mirror, Mark Brennan from FightOnState.com, and it's a pleasure to welcome back Mike Irwin, the former
Thank you, Jacob. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to be back.
Well, of course, Penn State fans would have liked to see a different result yesterday. Northwestern beating Penn State pretty handily on homecoming, 29-6. What's your biggest concern out of this loss, Neil?
Well, it would be a pretty long list, but I think in the big picture, this transition through the sanctions, through the coaching transition, you expect they weren't going to go undefeated. What concerned me was really seemed to be a lack of preparation, untimely timeouts, situations that came up during the game. It didn't seem like everybody was on the page. Same page. James Franklin admitted they weren't ready to play. So I think those issues of really not being prepared was the biggest concern to me.
To me, the most troubling part is the offensive line, and that's no secret. And I don't want to come across as piling on because I know these guys are trying hard, but they're just not talented enough at this point. And I think the primary concern, if you're a Penn State fan, is I don't know where it's going to get better. It's not as if they have other guys waiting in the wings who are prepared to play right now. So I'm just not sure what magic buttons they can push during this bye week for this offensive line to get better. They're going to have to try to scheme their way around it. I'm not sure what they're going to do. I think they schemed their way around it through the first 4 games. I think Northwestern kind of figured out how to stop it.
It's unbelievable. I agree with both of these nitwits.
Wow.
On the preparation on the offensive line. This is going pretty far to the left this time, But I think, when you look at the game itself, I mean, Northwestern coming in here at 1-2 and Penn State being 4-0 and playing a 12 o'clock game, I think it's hard to get them up. And I agree. I think Fitzgerald did a great job preparing Northwestern. And I think they have the talent at Northwestern. And they lost some games. They lost to California and they lost to Northern Illinois. They lost 2 games and aren't exactly marquee games. And so I think the fact that they've come in, it was hard to get too intense about coming out and beating Northwestern. Now I think we have to regroup. But looking at the problem, the offensive line has been, our Achilles heel all year. I mean, the offensive line hasn't done it. And again, yesterday, so I think they got to make some adjustments with the offensive line.
Well, picking up on it, they've already moved defensive players over to the offensive line. They've had injuries with Diefenbach has been hurt. I mean, the longer he's out, the more he looks like Jerry Kramer. I mean, really. I mean, they can't seem to function. But, going back to the O'Brien era, when he came in, he felt they had way too many offensive linemen on the roster, and now it's out of kilter where these guys don't have enough really good option bodies to work with.
And here's the thing, everybody would say, well, yeah, but the sanctions, he was saying that before the sanctions hit, that they had too many offensive linemen on the roster. And the other issue is the last couple of years of the Paterno era, they recruited very poorly. Like Donovan Smith's the only guy who really worked out of those players. I mean, Diefenbach, obviously, you wish he were healthy. But Mike, going back to what you said, they have to make some adjustments. What? Who else are you going to play? I don't think any of these true freshmen are ready to come in. Dowry, we've seen in spots. I mean, is he an improvement? And again, I don't want to come across as knocking these guys because they're playing hard. They're trying. They're just not experienced and talented enough to get it done against this level
I
of
just
comp.
wonder, never played offensive line in my life, but when I look out there, it doesn't seem like they're firing out and staying low and driving people out of there. It seems like they're staying around, maybe looking for the passing game rather than the running game. So I would try to simplify things and maybe go to some zone blocking schemes like Iowa always, like a zone blocking team. And I think we had let these guys fire out low because they're getting out leveraged by Northwestern. I mean, the guys were getting into the backfield. I mean, it was a terrible game for the offensive line, but I think they got to look at their technique and maybe make some adjustments.
And speaking of technique, and I know Mangiero is a leader, and I agree, and I think at times he's played okay, but his snaps are low, they're slow, and it's disrupting what little rhythm Hackenberg's able to have.
Yeah, there really is no flow to the offense at points because of that. You have the 4 sacks yesterday. It could have been 8, if Hackenberg, or even more if Hackenberg doesn't kind of scramble at points or extend some plays. They've now got 14 sacks this year. That's 105th in the country. Only 2 yards per carry.
I'm not sure we've
as well.
seen a Penn State quarterback take a physical beating like he took yesterday. In some of it, he brought on himself in the way he's running, and that part of that was Northwestern secondary did a good job.
And I think what people have to understand, and we've had people on our message boards being critical of Hackenberg, he's still 19. And defenses are realizing that you have to pressure him to stop Penn State, and he has to learn. I'm not concerned about him. I mean, this is a guy with a boatload of talent, and I think he's only going to get better if he can stay healthy from all of this. I go back to the line. I just don't see where it's getting better this year. I just don't. I mean, you could talk about zone blocking, Mike, and everything else. I'm just not sure where they're going to get better. The other thing that I'd like to throw out real quickly, on that 4th and 1 to Belton late in the game, that was the most slow developing play. And everybody's looking at the thing of Gaia blocking into Nelson, and that was a mistake. But you go and look at that play, you need 1 yard. And you're taking this play that's taking 3 seconds or whatever to develop.
I agree 100% with that, Mark. I mean, they got to get into the secondary quickly. They have 3 really good running backs, I think. I mean, but they haven't given them any running room. But it takes so long for these plays to develop. I mean, they are standing around and not firing out and getting the guy into the hole quick enough. I mean, you get Belton and some of these guys into the secondary, Lynch into the secondary quickly, they can at least do something once they get there.
Hey, I realize you're talking about a 2,000-yard rusher, and this would probably be somewhat of a panic move, but you have an off week. If you want to think about moving Zwinnach to fullback, it probably would be his more natural position if he has a future at the next level, and he's a good player. And it would bring you one more blocker and get him on the field with these, Lynch and Belton.
Yeah, that comes down, like you were talking about before, preparation and how to go about it. And James Franklin yesterday saying that this team just wasn't ready to play when we come back. It's a simple question that I'll ask you guys, and maybe there is no easy answer. Can that be fixed? We'll find out when we return.
The NitWits are brought to you by Irwin Financial Raymond James, an independent firm and firm foundation for your financial future. Coldwell Banker, no one will work harder to sell your home. By Doctors Howells, Reed, and Solani, orthodontics for children and adults. By Fiore True Value on 6th Avenue, Altoona. Just ask rental. Buy what you want, rent what you need.
I'm Deshaun Hamilton from your Penn State Nittany Lions, and you're watching the NitWits.
Deshaun Hamilton, he had a 51-yard catch in double coverage, one of the few bright spots yesterday for Penn State. James Franklin says his team overall wasn't ready to play. That's something that you had a concern with as well. Can this be something that you look moving forward that can be addressed easily?
Well, that part of it I think can be fixed. I mean, the emotional part of it, because we've seen that. I think that appears to be one of James Franklin's strengths. So I think they will. But, he made a point, Northwestern, all week. That's all the only focus, even though they had a bye week. I'll be curious what they do with the bye week. To me, the Central Florida game kind of caught up with them yesterday. It was a tired team. You could kind of tell. And, to your point about the offensive line, they had kind of functioned with that with the short passing game. They had overcome that early. And Hackenberg has been off. He's been missing Lowe for more than just games. So I think some of those things, I would say, can be fixed.
I think that one thing that can be fixed is Hackenberg. If they can take this time for him to really look at film, which I'm sure he does all the time, but you have a little extra time now, and see some of the mistakes he's making. Like I said, to me, long term, he's not an issue whatsoever, but I do think there are a lot of things that he could learn from. And that short passing game, just get more precise with that. And I think you start making people pay for coming after you like that, and maybe that's the way to take some pressure off the O-line.
You always look bad when you lose, and that first quarter was a poor example of Penn State football. But you look at the second and third quarter; they actually played pretty well, and I think you felt like Hackenberg was going to bring them back, and they were going to win that ball game. But first two plays of the fourth quarter, that interception he threw to the rookie Walker, the linebacker from Northwestern. And then fumbling right after that. I mean, we had opportunities there early. I mean, I know they threw one into the end zone, and Gino didn't quite catch it, and they had some other people open there. That a couple plays that if they could have gotten back in the game real quickly, but it didn't happen.
Yeah, that's true, Mike. I mean, the domination that Northwestern had early on, you thought, boy, they should have been up way more than Penn State's down a touchdown, one score, 14-6 early in the fourth quarter. So they had the chance, and the defense in particular kept giving them some chances, even though, I mean, this was not Bob Shoop's best game. I mean, they couldn't cover the tight end at all.
Yeah, but even so, I mean, I think when you talk about giving up the 2 early touchdowns, I mean, neither one of those was very good. But the last 3 scores were all, one's a pick 6 and then 2 short field scores. I thought the defense did enough to keep them kind of in the game, and you would hope, if you're a Penn State fan, that the defense is able to stay as healthy as possible and keep playing like this, because I think against most opponents, they should be able to be there in the game in the fourth quarter. Unfortunately, this was an instance where, as good as Penn State's offense had been in the fourth quarter and coming back and doing things, this is the time that it all imploded.
Well, you wonder what a factor it was when the linebacker Wortman was out of there. I mean, I think they were throwing a lot down the seam, and especially that Dan Vitale. Yep. How many completions, the number 40, do they make in the seam? And I'm not sure
7.
Wortman being in there might have made a big difference. I know Walker played, and
Kabinda they
got
brought
the
in.
freshman.
And that's where Kabinda ended up with 8 tackles or something. I thought played real well in the running game, but he struggled covering the tight end. And that's where, as Joe used to say, sometimes you do have to give the other guy credit. I think Northwestern noticed an issue and was able to capitalize on that.
You saw about a handful of plays that you thought maybe could be game changers. The Amos interception, Mike Hall even, that stop on that fake field goal, Deion Barnes to start the second half had a couple big stops. Is it a concern that they couldn't ever get over that hump, though, as far as momentum, when you're talking about these kind of blips of possible game-changing plays?
I just thought there were some things in the game, like, you go back to, Penn State's going to lose some games that maybe you don't expect, but the way they played, I think, was the concern. They had to call timeout a couple times in situations that you would think they wouldn't have to, and they burned those, and there was just some not being, you saw Lewis go in, Hackenberg threw it outside, just little things like that that you don't expect. You expect them to lose it, but not necessarily like the way they did.
But to Jake's point, I mean, what we didn't see in that game was complementary football. You always talk about, okay, maybe the offense is struggling, but come up with a big stop and then go down and then score 7. Or get something big out of special teams. They finally get a nice play out of Della Valle and really, ended up getting a field goal out of it. And there just wasn't that complimentary type of play. And that was the other issue. Again, early in that game, their special teams were awful.
Yep.
I mean, block kicks. Two blocks. I mean, giving up a long punt return. You can't have those kind of things and expect to win games when your offense isn't clicking.
Yeah, and that, of course, leads to frustrations. We saw some of that kind of coming out in the game yesterday, emotions boiling over on the sidelines.
Yeah, plus, just real quick, Penn State got almost all the breaks.
Yeah.
A couple of the key calls that went against Northwestern. Northwestern overcame a lot.
All right, that final note before we head to break. When we do come back,
it's all his fault.
And another thing.
He doesn't know what he's talking about. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
We'll try to make sure that the shouting doesn't happen here as we take a look at if this is a bigger issue for the Nittany Lions, this infighting during the game. Again, we'll try to keep it to an inside voice. We won't argue here when we come back.
The NitWits are brought to you by Monarch Cleaners for all your cleaning needs. By your rehab choice, Health South Altoona. Ask for us by name. By Courtesy Motors of Altoona, where courtesy means a great deal. By the Allegro, where fine cuisine is a way of life.
I'm Deion Barnes from your Penn State Nittany Lions. You're watching the NitWits.
Thanks, Deion. Good game for him, especially early in the second half, but it didn't pay off in the long run. Some frustrations on the sidelines in the second half as Bill Belton and Christian Hackenberg getting into it on the sidelines. I'm sure we've all seen it by now. Does that raise any issues of how this team is handling the adversity in game?
Well, yeah, to a point. I mean, obviously everybody's frustrated, but you almost never see a Penn State football player react quite like that on the field during the game. Yeah, you've seen stuff on the sidelines when the cameras go off at times, but I was surprised that Belton, as a fourth-year senior, directed that much frustration seemingly at Hackenberg.
Yeah, you can't do that. You just can't do that on the field. You cannot do that as a senior, show up another player like that. Now, as for what everybody saw on the TV broadcast of those guys getting into it on the sideline, I have no problem with that whatsoever. The sideline is kind of, and Mike, you know this as a former player, the sideline is kind of where you go and hash things out, and you would rather talk about that stuff, but out on the field, to show up another player like that, and I don't know if that was his intention, but that's the way it came across.
But I think it's very frustrating because you're out there competing to win the game, and then you have an opportunity there. If he throws that ball to him, he might score, or at least get down there close.
Change the game.
And both of them are competitive guys. I'm sure they forgot about it by now. But, I mean, Belton's upset because if he gets the ball to him, he has that opportunity. It was a big play in the game, and in a way it keeps Hackenberg's feet on the ground, too, in a way. Hey, you're not perfect, I'm not perfect. We realize that, and I think Belton went up and apologized later for jumping on him on the field, which was a class thing for Belton to do. You don't want to hold these grudges, but as a team, they're all out there and they're working hard every day, putting in that kind of time. And I think it is, it just the blood was rushing to the head pretty quickly there.
And he had short off Belton 2 or 3 times during the game, so it was kind of building.
But what I would counter is that if people freaked out on the field every time Bill Belton made a mistake, I don't think that would go over very well with him. He's an emotional guy too, and if he misses a block or if he, jukes the wrong way and costs them some yardage, you can't do that as a senior player, as a leader of the team. And I think, again, hash it out on the sideline. I have absolutely no problem with that, but not on the field.
Probably doesn't build any confidence in Hackenberg either, when he's screaming at him in front of all.
Well, how do you think Hackenberg felt when that happened? I'm sure he felt terrific. I mean, that was
Well, I'm sure he's not trying to throw it there. It happened to be there, and he was under pressure all day. I mean, he got knocked around quite a bit that day, and he had his opportunities, and we missed a lot of opportunities. I mean, we play Northwestern again; it might be a different outcome, but that day we lost.
What we don't know is what the practice situation was. Of course, it can happen in practice. Things happen in practice, but is there a pattern of frustration that has been building?
I couldn't tell you that. I would imagine that with every team, there's probably different levels of frustration, and that's probably why they don't let us into practice, only but for a little bit of week.
A mountain out of a molehill here. I mean, I think it's an incident that happened. They're both competitive. They're fighting for the win, and the play doesn't work as they expected it to, and they're upset that it didn't work. I mean, it was more about the team and losing that opportunity than I think it was.
I'll promise you that will be addressed and I'm not saying I'll address it, I'm saying I will be shocked if the staff doesn't address it. They're not going to talk about it, but they're going to look at that on film and say to Belton basically, you just can't do that.
But you see this in college football a lot, some of the head coaches jumping on their players on the sideline, and I think Franklin keeps it level.
He's very impressive that way on the sideline. I've been really, we saw him for the first time after a loss. I thought he handled himself with great class right away. I mean, remind you of Joe, give Northwestern credit and take the blame himself.
Yeah, and listen, every time when you see players make mistakes on the field and they come off, Franklin's always patting him on the back, and the assistant coaches, and there are different ways. Different coaches do things different ways. That wasn't quite O'Brien's way or Butler's way. But speaking to what you said, Neil, as well, his daughters were up there at the press conference with him. So he didn't change anything, and he was up there answering questions. He's for losing your first game, and I'm sure it was very frustrating on the staff too. I thought he handled himself real well.
Well, we saw how he handled the first loss here at Penn State. What we need to find out, though, is how we're handling the first bye week as far as what's going on at Penn State as they get ready to not play anybody this Saturday. They've got a lot of things to fix. We'll take a look at how they'll be handling that when we come back.
The Nitwits are brought to you by the Altoona Professional Hearing Aid Center, your hearing aid healthcare professional. By EasyToUse.com, your Yellow Pages connection in print and online. By FightOnState.com, as close as you get to Penn State football without putting on a helmet. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State game day every Friday.
Hey guys, I'm Angelo Mangiero, center for Penn State. And you're watching the Nitwits.
Penn State with an open week next week, so we'll have a special guest here on the Nitwits. Penn State Athletic Director Sandy Barber will be joining us to talk football and plenty of other things as well. And as they head into this bye week, a little unsure how they're going to approach it. What would you like to see?
Well, I'm sure they're going to get a couple days off at some point. Probably their performance the other day cost them maybe a little bit of practice time that they'll have to use. But I think it'll be interesting to keep our eye on Michigan. Michigan goes to Rutgers. I think it's a night game also. And because good luck to the Michigan fans with the parking there, but for it's a lot of turmoil up there. We'll see how that shakes out.
The key for Penn State to me is number one, Hack going over film and that sort of stuff, but getting rest for a lot of these guys. I mean, a guy like Mike Hull, how many snaps has he played? The offensive line, these guys, criticize them, whatever, but they have played a lot of football. Get them some rest. Get all these people who have played so much some rest. And they're also going to do something interesting that he talked about with a lot of the redshirt guys. They're going to do some scrimmaging and stuff, which I think is cool. This way you get the veterans rest and you get the young guys a little bit of extra work.
All right, we're under a minute here, so let's take a look at the Nitwit of the Year standings if we can.
Oh,
nobody gets a football. We've got a deflated one, no winner. Still, Jacob, that's me, 3-1. Mike has one as the guest, so you and I, Mike.
You other guy, we're the only two. I mean, unbelievable.
Brennan, the no winners leading us.
Yeah, I know.
I'm glad I'm back, and I guess I don't pick Michigan.
It's all your fault, Neil. I'm telling
real quick, no names on the uniforms yesterday. I thought that was a cool touch on homecoming.
Yeah, I wish they would keep it that way. I really do. I like the old classic uniforms. Don't know if they're going to, but I would say names on jerseys. Get rid of them.
How's number
40?
No,
I like the names on the jerseys, especially all the people they're playing down there, running people in and out, and who's who. You're always looking down at your program to see who the new number is in there. So I'm 100% behind keeping the numbers on the jersey. It's great for homecoming in a way, but I don't think that's what we want to go long term.
All right, yes it is. All right, we'll see you next time here on the Nitwits.
The Nitwits are brought to you by Irwin Financial Raymond James, an independent firm and firm foundation for your financial future. Coldwell Banker, no one will work harder to sell your home. By Doctors Howells, Reed, and Solani, orthodontics for children and adults. By Fiore True Value on 6th Avenue, Altoona. Just ask rental. Buy what you want, rent what you need. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your cleaning needs. By Your Rehab Choice, Health South Altoona. Ask for us by name. By Courtesy Motors of Altoona, where courtesy means a great deal. By the Allegro, where fine cuisine is a way of life. By the Altoona Professional Hearing Aid Center, your hearing aid healthcare professional. By EasyToUse.com, your Yellow Pages connection in print and online. By FightOnState.com, as close as you get to Penn State football without putting on a helmet. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State game day every Friday. You can also see the Nitwits on AltoonaMirror.com. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week.